The next technique we're going to learn is laminating. And laminating basically just means when you layer pieces of paper on top of other pieces of paper. And the point of this assignment is for you to experiment with a lot of different ways of laminating. And so I'm going to show you 4 different techniques. And basically what you're looking at right now is I've just laid down a pretty thick sheet of hemp on all 4 of these squares. And I decided to do a thicker sheet of paper just because I wanted these to create sort of stiff paper when I'm done. But that being said, you do not have to start with thick sheets of paper. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. So the first one right here, what's happening here is I have a small watermark, and I also have a piece of craft foam that fits on top of it. And so what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to lay that screen on my mold, and then this shaped foam fits on top of it. And you can see that I have like the lines traced in Sharpie, so I can tell when I've got it lined up where it needs to be. So it's a watermark with craft foam on top. And in my vat right now, I have cotton, but it's actually pretty thin. Like there's not very much pulp in here at all. And the reason for that is I want my watermark to be really, really fine and show a lot of contrast. So I'm gonna go ahead and scoop through like normal and back and forth and side to side, back and forth, side to side. And when I feel like my shape is full enough, I can open up the side a little bit just to let some of that extra water drain through, because I won't need it. Because this is such a small little shape, it fills up with pulp really fast. And then from here, I'm going to peel off my craft foam, and then I'm left with a shaped mold and decal. Now, when I lay this down on my piece of paper, I don't want to get any of this dirty stuff that's on the edges, all this schmutzy kind of pulp. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just peel my watermark screen right off. And then I'll figure out where I want to place this, and then I'll just press it right on without a mold. And once I think it's attached well enough, I'll peel that off. So that's first technique, right, is using watermarks or cutting shapes out of craft foam to make shapes on top of your paper. The next technique you can use is you actually can purposely try to make uneven pieces of paper. So with my mold and decal, I'm gonna get my one that's the same size. Instead of dipping straight in and up, instead I'm just gonna take my mold and decal and drag it through at an angle. And I'm not even gonna put the decal on top. I'm literally just gonna drag this through at an angle. And so what I get is I just get like almost like an ombre effect, right? Where there's pulp on the bottom, there's none on the top, it's thicker on the bottom. And then I can take this ombre and just go ahead and press that right on top of my paper that's already there. And so that's gonna give me like a fade where there's no pulp on the top, it's thin in the middle, and then it's thicker at the bottom. So that's the second technique, is just basically like using your mold improperly, right, to get some interesting effects with thickness. Now, the next technique I'm going to use is creating shapes without using the craft foam. So I've got my mold and decal. I think I'm going to add a little bit more pulp so it's a little bit thicker. And this time I'm just gonna pull through like a normal sheet of paper. So all the way down to the bottom, straight up, back and forth, side to side. Carefully tilting the extra water off and open that up. So, right, that's just my normal sheet of paper. But instead of just putting this whole square down, I can actually come in with my bone folder and kind of separate the pulp and start to make other shapes. And so if there's any pulp that I don't want, I can just scrape it off my decal right back into the box. So let's make another shape right here. And basically, you know, any tool that won't harm your screen, you could use for this. I'm using my bone folder because I know that it's not going to damage my screen. And also, it's pretty good at like scraping off that extra pulp. So I do want to clean this up because any of that sort of like schmutz will show. So I'm making sure I get all that off. And then when I'm happy with the shape I created, you know, I just need to figure out where I want to place it on my paper. And then I can just press it on. And now we've got shaped paper on top. Now for the fourth one, this guy right here, I did something a little bit different. I put down a layer of the hemp, and then I actually just went ahead with my same size of mold and decal and put a sheet of paper right on top of that. But this time I want to try to add some color. So the first way we're going to make color in this class is actually just by taking colored paper and putting it in a blender. So this was probably about 1/3 of the way full with torn up pieces of paper, and then I just put it in a blender and added some water and mixed it up, and it broke down and made some pulp. But let's say I don't have a vat to put this in, so I can actually take my screen and just using like a measuring cup or something and just kind of like add pulp on top, right? And so you can kind of draw with this. Basically any way you want to like put pulp on the screen is going to work. So I'm going to go for kind of like a polka dot effect. You know, if anywhere gets too clumpy, I would recommend pulling some of that off because it'll look sort of icky. So this is going to be just like a layer of color. And then the same thing, I'm going to flip it over, press it on top, and then I've got some colored paper on there too. So that's going to be 4 different techniques of laminating paper. So the first one is making shapes with craft foam. I've got a watermark in there too. The second one is making like an ombre effect by dipping your mold and decal improperly in the pulp. This one right here I made just by using my bone folder to make shapes. And then on this one I added in some color with paper I made out of the blender. Now if I had another vat, I could definitely go ahead and dump this pink pulp in and use that to make pieces of paper as well. So that is laminating.